Hey team, you're about to experience my interview with Chris G. Chris G is the founder and MD of RIXXO, which is a B2B focused e-commerce agency that has been building B2B e-commerce sites since 2012. He is also the UK chapter lead for the B2B Ecommerce Association and is doing great work to expand the power and reach of B2B e-commerce in the UK and the rest of Europe. We had a fantastic conversation about where the B2B is today in Europe, what the state of play is, and what he sees is the future of B2B e-commerce. Enjoy. Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Chris G from RIXXO to the podcast. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you.
It is so good to have you along for the ride today. Hopefully, I know that it's about 4 p.m. your time, and we're talking off air that I think in almost every area of the world, when the kids get out of school 3 to 4 p.m., all of our internet seems to just get absolutely smashed. And so connectivity seems to have a little bit of a drop off once kids get out of school, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And probably also when you get to that time in the day when you're just doing your full day and you start getting distracted as well, and you start going, oh, what shall I do next? What's going to be the next thing? I'm renovating a house at the moment, so I often find myself slipping into just getting distracted occasionally into a new piece of furniture or a bit of smart kit, something else to confuse the family on how the lights turn on or off.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is amazing how tech really has truly overtaken our lives. And you not only are running a digital and e-commerce agency and have done for over 11 years at RIXXO, but you are now the UK chapter lead for the B2B Ecommerce Association. I'm good friends with Brett, of course, down in Australia. And what a cool thing. You've been doing that for 3 months now too, right?
It's been amazing. For a decade, I've been selling hard, really hard to sell e-commerce, and RIXXO is an agency and competing against every other agency and every other marketer. And the conversations with the B2B E-commerce Association are completely different. Hi, I'm Chris from the B2B E-commerce Association. Chris, come in, have my wallet, have my dinner, have my children, take this, have that. Just everybody is so excited that it now exists and there is something to get involved with. And yeah, I'm so excited that I'm a big part of it and have just so much steer and control for the UK as well. And I'm just really looking forward to getting my teeth into next year with our big plans that we have.
It is amazing, and it's pretty cool to see the evolution of B2B e-commerce full stop. When we look at it in the context of, say, B2C, D2C e-commerce, it really, at least in North America, in ANZ, where I spent so many years building my career, certainly B2B is at least a decade behind in terms of maturity, digital maturity. B2B tooling from an e-commerce perspective is probably 5 to 10 years behind, although that's catching up very rapidly as all of the vendors start to realize, oh, hey, this B2B thing actually has legs. We better start focusing on it a little bit more. And maybe there's a bit of blue ocean stuff going on here. But it is interesting to watch the evolution of B2B because I've worked in this space for over 20 years now. And for a long time, B2B just wasn't interested. They were not even large B2B companies, very large ones. And I've told this story on the podcast before. A few years ago, I was working with a company who is one of the largest manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors in the Asian region. And I think they're based in Singapore. And they're a multi-billion-dollar company working in the primarily the automotive space. And when we got to them, they were just trying to introduce B2B e-commerce into one single unit in one single division in the company. They had zero, multi-billion-dollar business, zero e-commerce, not one single functional B2B e-commerce website in their entire group. And they had some EDI, they had some punch out functionality, they had for their largest customers and their most complex customers that were buying lots of volume, they would support EDI purchasing, but pretty much everyone else had to go through an account manager, a BDM, a BDR, an SDR, something like that in order to make a purchase. And it was usually via, in some cases, it was still via fax, which just blew my mind. I didn't even realize there was still fax machines in existence. A lot of it was email orders. A lot of it was CSVs attached to emails. It just blew my mind that in a world where a company can grow to be a multi-billion-dollar company to not be doing B2B e-commerce in any meaningful way in the business, I just thought, wow, this truly demonstrates just how far behind B2B is versus B2B and D2C.
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit like the baby brother, and it gets the hand-me-downs. It's always been, what is retail using? Can I use that? And it's never been bespoke, so it's never really fit properly. It's always been too long in the legs, and you've had to cut a bit off, or you've had to use something for what it wasn't intended for. And that's how we ended up in the B2B space. My brother and I started RIXXO after quite a rocky start with a family tragedy into a business that we never intended to be in. And we fumbled our way through those years using things that they weren't intended for to achieve what we needed to. And we started sticking bits together and making good things out of two old rubbish things. And when we started building websites, retail had all this budget, they had all this money to go out and buy the shiniest new thing, the best new technologies. And that came with teams and account managers and so many people to do whatever you wanted. But B2B was picking up like, oh, we've got a WordPress site and that's it. And we've got 1 week and no money to achieve X, Y, Z. And so we were like nimble at sticking things together. And I think that's really just coming back to saying about 10 years behind. I think that's spot on. I think everybody agrees on the 10 years. And if I think back to what we were doing 10 years ago for businesses, we are doing now for B2B businesses what we were doing for some of the huge brands like River Island, Universal Pictures, some of the technologies and strategies we were using back then, we're now doing now for small to medium B2B businesses. But I think there's one fundamental shift in B2B that is happening and has been happening for a few years and is getting bigger and bigger, is that there are now businesses dedicated to providing for B2B, and they are bringing best in class products for B2B. It's no longer a hand-me-down. This is tailor-made for B2B. And when those hit the ground and they become more commonly known, they're going to get massive. You've got people like SparkLayer in Bath here in Bristol who are building a digital layer that sits on top of Shopify, BigCommerce, looking at Magento to add a single suite of B2B tools that converts the cheaper open-end, maybe open source products into a B2B tool without needing to go to enterprise, satisfying this huge chunk of the market. And then you've got platforms like Cloudify and Oro, who are B2B, absolute, just pure B2B e-commerce platforms. And then behind the big money and the big marketing, there are just these fantastic, and I'm meeting more and more of them through the B2B e-commerce association. There's just these fantastic, really niche platforms that are dedicated to B2B, know the ins and outs of everything. They know about the crazy pricing models. They know that salespeople are going out and agreeing a price for 1 unit, a different price for 2 units, then 10. And if you buy on a Thursday, so we can get it to you for Friday, it's 10. All of these crazy rules, they understand them. And for the last 5 or 6 years, they've been building platforms that can now work with that craziness. And so I think that 10-year gap in the next 5 years is going to get really small, really quickly.
I couldn't agree more. I've had Chris and Reese on the podcast, and SparkLayer is doing some amazing things. They've now released their SparkLayer platform for BigCom as well, which, of course, BigCommerce has their own B2B edition at the high end, which is their enterprise class product. But for all of the tiers below that enterprise class product, I think SparkLayer allows brands to now be on a smaller tier, a lower tier cost, the $79 a month, the $199 a month, the $599 a month tiers of both Shopify and BigCom, and still have a fully or fairly fully comprehensive suite of B2B functionality layered on top. And then I've had Jason Hine from Bloomreach on the podcast. I've had a lot of these players that even may have started out with a fully focused B2C, D2C offering. They maybe 2-3 years ago, particularly at the start of COVID, realized, oh my gosh, there's this whole other world out there called B2B e-commerce that we, first of all, know nothing about. So even if we wanted to solution for them, we couldn't. So we need to have a quote unquote B2B evangelist, which is what Jason is inside of Bloomreach, because he comes from a decade plus tenure in the B2B space. And so they're hiring people with these B2B specializations to come in and advocate for B2B inside these vendors, help them understand what B2B looks like, what their unique needs are, have conversations with B2B merchants, open up that dialogue in a credible way so that they can start building out blown B2B focused versions of their platform so that they can start to capitalize on what I consider to be still a very blue ocean opportunity. And I know for myself, when I first started up my consultancy, I had a real heavy focus on B2C, D2C, but also B2B. But I just realized that every man and their dog that's a consultant or an agency says they specialize in B2C and D2C. And I thought, why would I go into an absolute red ocean space where apparently I've got every single competitor on the planet going for the exact same client I'm going for, when I have a deep specialization in B2B and experience in B2B land? Why wouldn't I just completely double down on that, focus on that, where there's almost no one in the space? There's a handful, but there's hardly any. And certainly from a full stack solution architect and consultancy on B2B, there's almost no one doing that. And so I just am in such agreement with you that the vendors themselves are starting to make this much more accessible without spending obscene amounts of money than ever before.
And I really enjoyed that Bloomreach episode. That was, I think for me, it was one, if I was going to encourage a merchant to listen to the podcast and understand how us, as the experts in this industry, are all feeling about B2B and how we're feeling about our clients and approaching projects, it's a really good podcast to listen to, because he nailed it when he said that B2B is completely different. It's not an add-on to B2C. B2B is a totally different mindset. And there are things that are the same between the two, but that's more coincidence than them sharing the same thing. It's just you have a different customer with different objectives, with different journeys. And for me, I've always been of the mind that B2B e-commerce is not about the basket conversions. I've always felt that conversion rate at the basket is less important than conversion rate at the account, because people tend not to shop around so much once they've got a supplier. They don't go online and buy from this one today and then find it on Google the next day and switch to another one, top up with the moisturizer from here and then try. They find a supplier and then they rely on them. They become an intrinsic part of their offering to their clients. And the most important as a B2B e-commerce business is converting a guest to an account, to a trade account, to a trade credit account, and taking them through that funnel. So whereas retail is very much CRO and getting the conversion on the basket, get it now, smash and grab, take it, make sure, because we might never see them again, then marketing afterwards to that person to encourage them to come back. Your first foot forward in your journey is completely different. And that means the rest of your journey is different. But for me, that podcast really resonated as a mindset for us and an outward projection of how we're feeling towards our customers.
And Jason, I think, also brought up another brilliant point And I had never really thought of it in exactly this way before, put it so concisely, which is that in the B2C, D2C world, the merchant's goal is to get the customer to stay on the site as long as possible, shopping as long as possible, adding as many items to that basket as possible, cross sells, upsells, bundles, kits, just the amount of effort that people take in terms of search and merch, personalization. I think that just the whole goal of the merchant, and for that matter, the shopper, most of the time, customers of B2C and D2C brands, they are going to a website to shop. They aren't necessarily going there with the intent to buy. They are browsing. It's a bit more of an experience. They're looking, they're seeing if something catches their eye. They're seeing if something is at a price point that makes them convert in the moment. Whereas in the B2B world, not only is the buyer intent different, but so is the merchant's intent. Buyers are going there to buy, and they 9 times out of 10 they know exactly what they need, they know exactly what they want. They've got recurring shopping lists that they buy over and over again, and they want to get in and out of that experience as fast as humanly possible. And it's the same for the brand themselves. Is they're like, we want to remove all friction. We want to remove every single piece of buying friction that would cause them to stay on our site 1 minute longer than they absolutely have to complete their transaction. Sure, we want to personalize the experience based on the customer group that they're in and the catalog they have access to and the MOQs they have, etc. But all of that still leads to a situation where the customer ultimately spends less time on the site, not more. And I felt that was such a key distinction in the entire goal of the business. There's just really no comparison between the two.
Yeah. And it may not even be that person's journey. It may not even be theirs, because there are purchasing departments who are given go and procure. So they're on that site doing somebody else's journey. We've got a client, they sell £100 million worth of ceilings. It couldn't be any more boring to the everyday person. But to us, it's super interesting, because an architect will specify the product, and then someone else will specify the requirements that kind of improve or change that architect's specification. And then somebody else ultimately has to go and buy exactly the right amount. Now, they're not a ceilings expert. So how do they know what the right amount is? And that's when you've got these calculators on websites. And we often sit down to scope these with clients, calculators with clients, and they say things like, oh, they'll know exactly how much they'll need. Will they? Because what if it's Chris in the office who's been given a sheet of paper that says, this ceiling's 150 square meters and I need this model number? How would I know that I need clips, rails, off stands? And so those calculators need to be thought about for the completely uneducated. They need to be able to come on and just go, I've been told to buy enough of everything I need, 150 square meters of this. And that's getting them, again, off and on as quickly as possible. And then they expect their pricing to be there as well, to match what they've been told it's going to cost. So we have to build journeys for people that don't even want to be using these websites. That's not their journey. I'm not sat down on an evening scrolling through. Let's have a look at some trainers. Let's see which trainers are cool. I fancy a new pair. It's not. It's like, I've been told to go and do the food shop, and I don't want to be doing the food shop.
That's 100% when we think of the average B2C and D2C customer that's sitting down at Married at First Sight UK, end of a long, hard day. They got their coffee in hand. They got their iPad in hand, and then the commercial break comes on, and then they flick to their iPad, and they're on their favorite fashion website or their favorite 5 fashion websites, and they're flicking between them, and they're looking at new stuff, new drops. Okay, cool. What am I going to wear this weekend to go out to the party? Or what am I going to buy for my new house? Or what am I going to buy for my new car? What rims am I going to put on it, and tires and all these other things? It's very much a browser's journey. Not always, but it's often a browser's experience on a B2C and D2C commerce website. But you raise a very good point. Buying on behalf is exceptionally common in the B2B world. And it's not really, apart from gifting, it's not really that common in the B2C and D2C world that you would go and, or maybe a parent buying a bunch of new school gear for their kids. Gifting is the nearest equivalent we have in the B2C, D2C world of buying on behalf. And so therefore, in the B2B world, that is exceptionally common. We have entire procurement departments and teams that need to be able to buy on behalf of their teams inside the business. And even if it's something as simple as procuring the office stationery, that, you know, all the paper and all the toner cartridges and all the pens for the people that still use pens in the office, and even down to the computer gear, the new laptop for the new employee in the business. There are so many scenarios where buying on behalf is the norm in the B2B world, where the person doing the buying is not an expert on that stuff. And CPQ, configure price quote, which is effectively what you've just described as a calculator, well, in the B2B world, that's known as configure price quote. And some of these engines, by necessity, have to be super complex to extract the complexity away so that the ultimate buyer of that product can get through that buying process, and not just fast, but hyper accurate. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. The stakes are so much higher. In the UK, we've got the Distance Selling Act, and it protects consumers from buying from afar. Now, in the B2B space, if you don't change your terms and conditions and you don't create a separate agreement at the checkout, you are bound by default by our consumer laws, the Distance Selling Act. You could accidentally, if you've not taken care within your website, have somebody buy 16 tons of aluminium delivered on a lorry, and it gets to the other end and the person goes, oh no, I did that wrong, I'll send it back. And so if you've locked down your terms and conditions to say, if you order it wrong and that's tough, you need to get it right because this is a trade transaction, this isn't a retail transaction, you can't also then make it difficult for them to purchase, because you'll just lose them as a client. They'll feel trapped as a human being. They can't win in either direction. And one of my things about B2B is very much thinking about the human being. It for forever until today, B2B has been two salespeople. Basically, somebody comes in through your door. I used to be a field sales rep. You'd walk in through someone's door, you'd have your catalog in your hand, you would hold their hand through their purchase, you would guide them, you would steer them, you would correct them, you would learn, you'd listen to their jobs and advise. And now we're taking that and trying to make that digital. And there's a human aspect that we have to understand, is that we would naturally pick up on errors and help and make things right. Again, excited and losing my train of thought here, but it's those CPQ, like you say, they need to be a balance to make sure that we also don't lock clients out by giving them the wrong thing because it's too hard to use. So it has to be easy. It has to deliver exactly the right thing. It has to be the right price, and the human being has to be satisfied at the same time. That, to me, is completely different to retail. Retail, I can walk into a shop, pick something up. If I don't like it, I give it back. I don't have to have a bond with that shop in any way. I'm totally protected by all sorts of things. There's very little trust. There's very little need in either direction. It's just a transaction. And there's so much more at stake with these B2B transactions.
And I think you've called out one of the other really big elements of B2B stickiness, which is that when you usually, not always, but usually when you engage with a new supplier in the B2B world, the process to get onboarded with that brand as a supplier, even if they allow, quote unquote, guest transactions, meaning you can go to the website, you can create an account through the front end, and you can buy. Usually when you make that first B2B purchase, you're on the most expensive price until you negotiate trade rates. You get no credit, so you've got to pay with your business credit card when you check out. You've got the most restricted and limited catalog they have available because they have restricted catalogs for specific classes and groups of buyers within their business. And so when you go to purchase through them, even if they do allow those guest transactions, very rapidly, usually that transaction gets forwarded on to the sales team to say, okay, this is a hot lead effectively to go out and reach out to them and say, hey, we noticed you purchased on our website. Thank you very much. But look, let's explore what a trade account might look like for you. Let's explore what being on credit with us looks like. Let's look at what type of catalog products you need to normally buy or things that you would buy if we had them. Let's look at that. Let's look at what your buying frequencies are. Let's look at a whole bunch of these other things so that we can tailor the experience to you, get us on a trade account, and properly engage beyond the guest transaction that you just did. And as a result of that, the extra effort and time that it takes the buyer to get onboarded into the supplier's systems means that by definition, they become stickier, because unless they absolutely have to, they don't want to go through that process with 5 suppliers of the same stuff. Even if they could get it a little bit cheaper somewhere else on a specific SKU, they usually won't leave a supplier that they've already had a 5-year relationship, a good 5-year working relationship with. They just won't do it. And so by definition, B2B customers are automatically more sticky. And I think that lends itself to a situation where the B2B supplier, they have a deeper bond and connection with the customer because they know the LTV 9 times out of 10 is it can be 100x or 200x or 500x what it would be in the B2C D2C world. And as a result of that, they're willing to expend significant resources to keep that client happy over the long term. Whereas in the B2C D2C world, we're trying to create engaging customer journeys at scale purely with software. And so when those customers come to our website, we're trying to create search and merch experiences. We're trying to create personalization experiences. We're trying to create post-purchase automated flows. We're trying to create at-scale email onboarding. We're trying to do all these things at scale, but in a totally push way, as opposed to push and pull and through dialogue. And I actually think that the B2C, D2C world could learn a ton from the B2B world about creating that stickiness to where when we have any downtime in the B2C, D2C world and customer service, why aren't we jumping on the phone and having conversations with our best and our worst customers and saying, hey, thanks very much. We noticed you bought 5 times last year. We'd like to just have a conversation with you because we really value your opinion. We want you to help shape our next series of offerings to make sure they're really tailored and really perfect for buyers like you that already are really engaged with our brand. We so appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, here's I'm going to send you a $100 digital gift certificate just because we really appreciate your custom and we want you to know that on a personal level. I don't know any brand. I've never, and I spend probably 95% of my retail spend is online. Almost all of it would be online. Now, I know I'm not representative of the whole market, but the reality is, despite the amount of money I spend online, I don't think, unless there's a problem with my order, I have ever gotten a phone call from a brand in the B2C, D2C world. And in the B2B world, it's totally the opposite. I will get, there'll be follow-up calls, there'll be follow-up emails, they'll be like, hey, my name's Bob or Jill, I'm going to be your account manager. If you ever need anything, reach out to me. I'm here to help. I'm here to support you. Anything you need, we can make sure that it happens for you. And I am going to be your single point of contact within this business. That does not happen in the B2C, D2C world. And I think it's to their detriment.
And that kind of reaffirms the thinking of it's not baskets, it's accounts. We are securing accounts in the B2B space and not baskets, because that B2B business is going to approach me and say, hey, Chris, we don't want you to go anywhere else. So based on what you've spent with us so far and working on the fact that if we're good and we look after you, you'll stay with us for another 5 years. How about, rather than when we lose you or we think we're losing you, we give you a discount. We reward you for your loyalty now up front, and then we work on that together. And in B2B, the vendor makes the first move in the loyalty play. Usually, in my experience, certainly, they offer something to keep the account and to nurture the account. Whereas in retail, the emails are, we haven't seen you for ages. You left this in your basket. Can we give you something off? And again, I don't think I've ever had a retail experience where somebody's gone, every couple of months you come back and buy X, Y, Z. We'd love you never to think about changing product. So how about we just give you 20% off, 10%, 5% off forevermore? I would be blown away if I buy my hair putty from an organic, no goo type thing. And I've been buying that for years. If they sent me an email saying, you are now going to get this price forevermore, I wouldn't think twice when I was in a shop about looking at something different, because I would have been mind blown by them wanting to keep me before I'd thought about going, rather than the other way. So yeah, and it's interesting. But I think another thing about the whole B2B space and about working with agencies and consultants and tech partners who are B2B focused, everybody seems to have that mindset. They have a B2B mindset towards their customers. They have a B2B mindset towards their own sales, towards their delivery. It's less smash and grab. It's less, oh, we're going to spend 70% of your budget on designs and then it's not really going to work or be delivered on time after. There's this much more logical, foundational approach to delivering technology to be merchants. And that's one of the things that has pulled me really tightly into it. Is I love that approach. I think it's far nicer. We've got clients who have been with us for 7 years, which you don't see that really in the retail e-commerce sphere. It's always about year 3, year 4, we want to redesign. So we're going to go somewhere else, going to find someone else to redesign it. And sometimes they don't even ask their existing agency. They just immediately decide it. We're going elsewhere. Yeah. But it is exciting. And that's what drew me into wanting to be this head of e-commerce position, head of B2B Ecommerce Association here in the UK, because I want to try and amplify those thoughts and those feelings through the tech partners, through the merchants. And we all know, and the merchants who are listening will know, that they're really bad at getting out to agency tech style events. We go to these things all day, every day. We have great experiences. We make amazing relationships, but it's a little bit stuffier. It's a little bit more old boy. The communities are a bit tighter. The ones I'm dragging them out. Come on, come and meet the MD of this company. They're in the same boat as you. They're having the same problems. They've employed 3 e-commerce directors in the last 6 months. They've had a team of 2 and now they've got a team of 25 and their minds are blown by this fact. Come and swap war stories. Come to the B2B E-commerce Association drinks. Come and meet other people who are winning, losing, having problems, finding successes, and swap those stories with them. And because of my energy and passion for all of that, I'm just saying to people, like, if you need anything, if you need a conduit, if you want something doing, but you're not really sure where to go, use us at the association to do that, because that's how B2B works. It's repping, it's conversation, it's picking up a phone, not sending an email. It's a little bit old school until maybe another 10 years when we'll only be 5 years behind.
Love it. And this is such a cool thing. And in that vein, I just got back from B2B Online Florida, the physical conference. And what I noticed, and I have mentioned this before elsewhere, is that these physical conferences with B2B are so different to B2C, D2C conferences, even the big giant NRF and Shop Talk, etc. Those big B2C, D2C conferences are amazing, and I still enjoy going to them. However, there's a phenomenon at those conferences that I find that's very common, which is that the merchants spend half their time avoiding vendors at those conferences, not wanting to engage, trying to avoid the sales pitch. They know all the vendors, they know the tech stacks, they know the design patterns, they know what's out there and probably what's going to work for them. And there's a massive amount of FOMO anyway in the retail industry. They say X brand has moved off of Magento onto BigCommerce. Maybe we should look at doing that. Oh, they've implemented this PIM. Maybe we should look at that. Oh, they've implemented this CDP. Maybe we should look at that. So there's a lot more FOMO in the B2C, D2C space, and therefore there is an arm's length level of engagement oftentimes with vendors at those conferences, and the vendor hall can oftentimes be empty for the vast majority of the time because people are actively that and moving to the next track or the next talk or the next keynote. I noticed the exact opposite at this B2B conference, which was brands were actively seeking out vendors that could sort their problems. And so they were actively going into the vendor hall. They were actively engaging in discussions with the vendors. They were saying, what do you do? How you do it? This is some of the problems we're having. How would you solve for this? So there was much more active engagement in that scenario.
And we've just had the iMedia Beat Summit in Australia. And the feedback and testimonials have been incredible. So We're now talking about bringing a B2B e-commerce summit here in the UK next year. We've got these events. I went to Ecom Expo the other week, and you can definitely see that there is a leaning towards B2B. But you're right. I think the trouble is that sometimes the vendors, the B2B merchants, are a little too overwhelmed at a retail event. There's too much, and it's sometimes too creative, too tangible, and they need numbers, they need stats. They're more into KPIs than pixels. They're more into integrations than imagery. It's a different feeling, and that's what we're working to curate with that, with the e-commerce association. So yeah, I think if you're looking for just some boring business conversations and just being able to say, yeah, so-and-so's put in a PIM, how was it? Oh, it was great. Oh, it was awful. Yeah, but watch out because this is going to be really difficult at this stage. It's definitely worth networking and getting out there with peers.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here is that in the B2C, D2C space, and I'd love your take on this, when I go to an event or I go to a conference, there might be 5 search and merch technologies there. There might be 5 personalization technologies there. There might be 5 e-commerce platform technologies there. There might be 10 different fintech payments, buy now, pay later technology platforms there. There might be 10 or 15, maybe 20 agencies of the largest agencies that can afford to sponsor these types of events there. There is just so much overwhelm in trying to be able to even differentiate between these technologies, because there is overlap, there is similarities, there is commonalities. Some of them are so similar that it is hard to tell the difference with one PIM versus the next PIM versus the next PIM, the one CDP, the one marketing automation platform versus the next 5. If you come from the B2B space, you're like, first of all, you just don't have that many technologies to choose from for a start off. There might be one search and merch technology that does B2B super well. There might be one personalization technology that does B2B really well. There might be one at an event, there might be one CPQ platform that does what and works and targets your vertical and does it super well. First of all, there's a lot less vendors with each piece of functionality that you have to try to decipher between. Second of all, I think those vendors, as you rightly point out, they are much more reserved in their engagement model with B2B merchants because they know that they are likely to be stickier with those merchants for a long period of time, right? In the B2C, D2C space, a brand will swap out its search and merch technology at the drop of a hat. If they think they can increase conversion by 0.5% by swapping search and merch technologies, they'll make that change. And or at least at the end of their 12-month lock-in to that technology, they'll make a jump straight away. They'll chop and change their marketing automation platform at the drop of a hat. They'll chop and change everything almost at the drop of a hat. If they think they can convert better, they will change their post-purchase experience app, because all they've got to do is uninstall one Shopify app and install a different Shopify app to make that change.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot less vendor loyalty in the B2C and D2C world than there is in the B2B world. And that's also exacerbates that engagement model.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're going to an event, you've taken a day out, and B2B businesses, I think one of the things, I have a different take on B2B businesses than the next person. And B2B businesses come in different sizes and different shapes as well. And I think one of the things we'll start to see is new brackets and maybe labels appearing for B2B, because there are humongous businesses doing B2B. Then there are small businesses doing B2B. And the difference between those two is vast as well. We had an inquiry not so long ago for a company that makes these multi-million-pound oil digging tractors, and they need one sale a year. But it's a B2B e-commerce site at its principles. But that's completely different to one of our other clients who maybe they're one of the largest manufacturers of fire extinguishers. And so that's a completely different offering as well. So the B2B businesses that I see, usually family businesses, not very big teams, maybe 10 to 20 people. They're doing 10 to 30 million with that really small team. They've got loyal customer base, but they're busy. They are busy and efficient machines. So to take a day out to go and shop for something that you're not that interested in, your hands being forced to do, you aren't feeling too comfortable about having to do it, and every time you've tried it before it's gone wrong, you then get to this space and you speak to 5 people and none of them can actually meet your requirement because, oh no, we can't handle individual customer pricing in our search once logged in. Oh no, we can't handle having to have a sign off and qualifying if this account qualifies for this product before we can show it as a related item. So the B2B E-commerce Association Summit are going to help with that massively because we're going to be a pre-filter. You're going to know that if you turn up to that summit, if you go on that day, we have filtered out the noise. And those people who are there, who are speaking, who are selling, who are visiting, are invested in B2B. And it's not going to be a drain on your time. It's going to be a worthwhile trip because especially my vision for this UK chapter is that it is worth it. It's really worth it being a member and being involved and being a tech partner and being a vendor partner. We're going to carefully create and curate an experience that makes it worth it for these B2B merchants, because just like they're doing with their customers, which is nurturing the account, that's what we're going to do. We're going to nurture those B2B merchants so they find value and that they lean on us and value what we're offering. Not going to be the retail type association, which is boom, cut and shut. Thanks for your transaction. We'll try and recover you if it looks like you're going.
It's a totally different mindset. And I really do truly love the B2B space as a result of that different mindset and that different operational and technical focus and getting things done. For all the love I have for the marketing industry, it is sometimes a real challenge to engage with D2C and B2B merchants because most e-commerce projects are run by the marketing team or heavily driven by the marketing team. And sometimes they don't necessarily have a great grasp of the tech and what it's capable of. And so therefore they get into a situation where they have very specific requirements that require high levels of customization to achieve one specific thing on behalf of their customers. And look, I'm all for great customer experiences and differentiated customer experiences. But if this one piece of functionality that is in the grand scheme of things relatively minor cannibalizes 50% of the build budget, does it make sense? Do you really have to have it? Do we want to A/B test that? Do we want to canvas our customers? Do we want to talk to them? And that's the other thing is the two-way conversations with customers in the B2B world make sure that from an adoption perspective, you can be having these conversations with your B2B customers long before you ever even go into scoping of the website. You can take them on the journey with you throughout the scoping. You can take them through the prototype phase and the POC phase with you. You can get them to trial and test certain pieces of functionality of your website. Does this work for you? What would you like us to change? How can we tweak this? So uptake of this new digital channel inside your business. And so therefore, the testing that you do and the canvassing that you do in the B2B world before you go into build, during build, and then post build in terms of your sales teams being able to handhold and onboard those customers into this new digital solution that you've created. And the fact that it has such high value to you as a merchant to do that and to spend that one-on-one time with them means that as long as you put a credible adoption plan together, you usually are going to see a very high rate of adoption of your digital solution in your customer base. Whereas in the B2C, D2C world, it's, a lot of marketing teams, they think they know their customers so well that they think they know the functionality. They think they know the customer journey that they should be building. They think they know all the friction points because they've done 2 years of A/B testing. But the problem is that when they A/B test an old site with an old design, and then the new design is almost starting from a clean sheet of paper, now all of a sudden, do all those learnings that you got over the last 2 years, are they relevant? And your customer base is likely changed in that time too. So the reality is that all those supposed learnings, are they immediately relevant to the new build that you're doing? Possibly not. And it's such an interesting space to play as a result of that tightness between the vendor and their B2B customer.
There's so much we can learn from B2B, so much we can learn. They'll keep a site live for 10 years and that site will become an establishment and their customers will know it intimately and they'll be happy with it and they won't want it changed. And the, there's a reason that they don't change it very often is you don't lose a sale in B2B, you lose an account. If you change too much and you do it wrong, you don't just miss a basket, you lose an entire account, 5 years worth of orders. You can't just go, oh, hey, let's A/B test a completely different way to shop today. And then you alienate a procurement manager and they just go, oh, that was awful. I don't ever want to come back and do that again. And if they don't not use the website, they may pick up the phone and you may be scaling back your internal human resources to fit a leaner, more digital plan. And then that scuppers your plan again. So there's lots we can learn, or not even, we still dabble with retail aspects with the D2C side. So there's lots we can bring over, but thinking about the human being on the other end as a person, we don't want to lose the person. Sure, there's baskets, but keeping the person for longer and keeping them happy and keeping them motivated to use the site. We want to improve, but also we have to not regress. And I love what you say about we A/B test. I've never understood this. I've been doing this for a decade. We A/B test site one. We build it, we design it, we A/B test it for 5 years, and we say, guys, this site is optimized. It is the pinnacle. We have tested every click, every page, every aspect. Let's redesign the site. And then the new design contains none of that learning because it's just been kind of mind blown for me. Absolutely mind blown. Whereas if they left
we could talk all day about it. I think in a way we could literally. Sorry to interrupt. I think the just the dynamics. I think overall what we're saying here is that the dynamics are so different between B2B and D2C. I think the dynamics between B2B and D2C are much more similar than they are B2B versus B2C. I think D2C in terms of manufacturers, wholesalers, and distributors selling to end consumers, that has a lot more in common with B2B than B2C does, where you're effectively selling other people's stuff. And the whole competitive dynamics are very different in the B2C versus D2C world. But I think just generally speaking, B2B is an entirely different beast. And what we're saying is, if you're going to engage with a consultant, if you're going to engage with an agency, if you're going to engage with a technology vendor, if you're going to engage pretty much with anybody in the B2B world, you need to make sure that they understand the nuances of B2B. You're not going to go to your friendly neighborhood B2C agency. They might even be a big agency or a medium-sized agency. They might have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 staff within that B2C development agency, but they may have very little institutional knowledge about B2B. And so technically speaking, they might be able to build something, but if they don't understand what they're building for and the journeys they're building for, and even when they do their discoveries, if they don't ask questions based on a lot of B2B experience, they're going to overlook so many nuances of that B2B experience that are required to operate your business that when they get into build, you're going to have the assumption that at least all the things that I had on my old e-commerce website, if I had one, at least all that stuff is going to be there in the new site and more, and layers on top of that, and a better customer experience. But that assumption is oftentimes going to be wrong if you are not dealing with specialists in the B2B world that just do not understand those nuances.
Yeah, the word invoice means something completely different in retail than B2B. The term credit note is a completely different thing. You don't, I would say that during our kind of foundations, our discovery processes, we spend more time talking about accounting methodology, bookkeeping, how transactions are moved around after the e-commerce system, why certain things appear on packing slips, why you use QR codes and not barcodes, why you can't put this product on this shelf in a warehouse, which means it has to be in a different location versus the actual e-commerce stuff, because the pixels roughly come out the same. It's the nuances of B2B that are the thing that makes it really challenging. And then if you bring someone from a retail space in and you say, talk to me about how we're going to apply this credit. Oh, we'll just put it on there. We'll send them a refund. No, we can't send them a refund because it's paid on credit account. Well, we just put it on the credit. We can't do that because the credit account's actually paid, and now they'll have a balance, and we can't hold a balance in, and all these things will come out. And if you've never dealt with it, if potentially maybe you've never even worked in a B2B business or worked in a B2B call center or had to take orders over the phone, it's a different world. Yeah, it is very different. And I think one of the things that I keep coming back to is the people who are really fighting for B2B, the people who are appearing on your podcast, the people who are taking part in the B2B e-commerce association, those businesses who are locking in as the B2B niche only, and they are sticking on their homepage, we are a B2B agency, we are a B2B tech platform, we are a B2B SaaS offering. Those are the people who really get it when they've shut the door on working in retail, because you have to be focused. It is different. I've had to configure my agency differently to offer B2B versus the retail stuff. You have to have different people, different processes. One of the great things is we can now close at Christmas. As an agency, we can close on Christmas Eve and we can come back in the new year because our clients, all bar one of our clients, are closed for that same period of time. So we have a different HR structure because of our client type. Like the knock-on effect is so different. We don't have out of hours kind of support or call rotors because 99.9% of everything happens Monday to Friday, 8 till 5. Great.
It's awesome, isn't it? It is awesome. Well, listen, Chris, this has been an absolutely enlightening conversation. An hour has absolutely flown by. I super appreciate your ability to share, your openness, your candor, your insights. They are very valuable. I think this will probably end up being one of our best B2B episodes ever. We're now at the time where I get to flip the script and hand the microphone over to you. Let you ask me one question, any question that you like, personal or professional. So, Chris G from RIXXO and the B2B Ecommerce Association UK, what is your question for me today?
So I'm going to ask you a question that I ask pretty much everybody that I work with is, if I could give you a magic wand and I could change something for you overnight in what you do, what would it be?
Fantastic question. Love this question. I would probably wave a magic wand over the entire B2B industry, and I would automatically retire anybody over. This is probably going to alienate a bunch of people, so I better not say that. But okay, I would automatically retire anybody who thinks that digital does not matter in the B2B space because it's all still person to person and only relationships matter. Because I still see that too often when I go in to work with these B2B brands, the CXOs, the CEOs, the leadership teams that are very old school, and their verticals are very old school, their categories are very old school. They are 99% field sales businesses, and the customers might even be asking, where's your e-commerce offering? Because their buyers have been replaced with a younger generation of buyers, and they just have a natural expectation they're going to be able to buy online, but they can't through these legacy suppliers. And they just accept it. They're not happy about it, but they accept it because a lot of these B2B suppliers have total monopolies, and whether it be a manufacturer or wholesaler or distributor, they oftentimes have total monopolies in their space and in their region. And therefore, their buyers have to keep buying off them, whether they want to or not. But the moment there is another competitor, the moment there is another realistic option that offers really solid, really smooth, frictionless digital channels, they will make that jump. They are just looking for an opportunity to move away from that monopolistic supplier. So I think there's a day of reckoning coming to the B2B world that they don't even see coming, which is that, and I've seen this firsthand when I was still back in New Zealand. There was a very large local supplier of a specific category of products. The only reason they were considering implementing e-commerce was not because they wanted to, but because there was a new upstart in their industry that was digital only, that was a pure play e-commerce business. They had field sales only insofar as they would send those field sales reps out to be able to take a field sales snapshot of the gear they had deployed into the field so that they could save that in the online account so that when they needed to buy replacement parts, upgrades, et cetera, it could make the online purchasing smoother and more accurate and better from a fitment perspective. But the field salesperson was not out there doing sales. They were out there gathering data, gathering information to make the online buying experience smoother. So I think that to me is something that's still holding the industry back. It is legacy owners, it is legacy founders, it is people with a legacy mindset who don't see the value of digital in their own life because maybe they don't shop online themselves, so they think it is of no value to anybody else, and they are going to get a rude awakening. So that would be my magic wand move, is to automatically retire anybody who does not see the value in digital experiences.
Yeah, I feel that. And I think, if you don't want Jason to retire, we are talking about like a hitman type situation, yeah? Or do you mean that they get to go off to California and relax?
Or Mexico. They get to, Mexico, exactly, sipping margaritas.
But there's a couple of things that you can do instead of being retired, isn't there? There's your B2B businesses, a ton of family businesses. And it's bring your sons and daughters, listen to them, let them tell you how the world is changing, and be open-minded to what they say. Because if you are a B2B business and a family business, one day they'll be running that business and their peers will be running your clients' businesses. So listen to them because they are predicting the future for technology. And it's not to say that they're right. It's to say that they are a bit right. They have an opinion that matters. And if you combine your years of experience of growing your successful business, and then we understand as well why you don't want to change that business because it's doing really well without a website. But in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, will it be doing really well without a website? Probably not. If we went back 100 years and you had a B2B business and you didn't have a car, would your reps be doing as well as they're doing with cars now? You could have said, oh, we're not going to take on cars. Could you have said, oh, I'm not going to use computers? No, we're not going to use computers. We've done everything on paper. We're not going to move to computers. But you did. You moved to computers. So we need to go online. We're not happy about it. We understand. But there are stepping stones. There are ways in. There's way to ease into it. You don't have to go fully e-commerce. You could just have a digital catalog. Encourage people to ring up, use the catalog, get them familiar. But the change is happening, and we don't want Jason to retire, everybody, because that will create a stall in the industry, and that's bad for everyone.
Absolutely love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love the banter. Love the conversation. Now, Chris, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how is the best way for them to find you? Go to the RIXXO website, reach out to you on LinkedIn. How do you like people to find you if they want to have a yarn about anything commerce related, particularly B2B e-commerce related?
Absolutely. I'm available all the time. If you want to get involved with the B2B e-commerce association in any way, just email me, chris@b2b.org, or fill in through the website. Reach out to Brett or myself on LinkedIn. We're both here. We're on opposite sides of the world. We cover 23.5 hours of the day awake. It's there. And I'm happy just to chat anything e-commerce. If you have a problem, if you want to talk about a solution, I spend so much of my time, as you can tell, just nattering, because I learn so much from those conversations with other people that I use that in my day. So I'm just happy to talk. So hit me up on LinkedIn, B2B E-commerce Association, and I'll be there. Excitable.
Love it. Thank you so much, Chris. Love it.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Jason.
Look forward to speaking to you again soon, my friend. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.